You can live for a long time with the confidence that your life is flowing smoothly and calmly. The only problem in your life might be a slow iPhone. Indeed, a beautiful wife, 2 nice children, and only bright prospects for a happy old age ahead. But everything can change overnight. Suddenly you find yourself on the sidelines of life or walking in a completely different direction, surrounded by entirely different people. I was born prematurely, and my parents spent my entire childhood trying to protect me from life's storms. I walked outside with the boys, always under the supervision of one of them or my grandmother. Coming home at odd hours was a tragedy of universal proportions. The boys in the area were always good psychologists. They had a keen sense of human nature and reacted accordingly. They understood my nature. I was bullied by everybody, even the girls. It got to the point where I was afraid to go out. Right outside the doorway, I was met by an aggressive crowd of peers, and the cycle continued. I am Elton, and I am a man shaped by life's trials, from childhood bullying to military service, navigating the complexities of love and trust. Educational work began, but it felt futile. I would come home covered in bruises, and my parents couldn't do anything about it. They tried to talk to the kids, but it only made things worse. You can't keep following a teenager around all the time, protecting him from adversity. It seemed that my hopeless childhood would never end, and my days would end under the skirting board. One day my mother's cousin Robbie came to visit us. He was finishing military school and was about to leave for the army. He immediately grasped my situation. It was winter, and hockey battles were going on in our yard. My place was outside the hockey box. Uncle Robbie had been observing my suffering for some time, and one night he came into my room. Human beings are predators. Among predators, there is only one right, the right of the strongest. You will be beaten all your life until you fight back and you shove your fear aside. Nothing will change. A man is all about honor. You don't have it now, but there's a chance to get it back. Don't be afraid of pain, blood, and snot. Gather your will into a fist and fight back with dignity. You may lose, but your honor will not suffer, Robbie said, stroking my head, lighting a cigarette, and then leaving the room. 2 days later, I was accepted into the hockey team. One of the boys fell ill, and I was assigned to replace him. During a game in a tense situation, accusations were thrown at me when a pass was missed. In the end, the unlucky player even punched me in the face. All the accumulated rage hit me at once. Without thinking twice, I struck back with my stick. The guy collapsed on the ice, bleeding from the bridge of his nose. From that moment on, everything changed. No one called me names or harassed me anymore. I was accepted into the pack like everyone else. I went to different sections in my childhood, learning a little music and playing hockey. Uncle Robbie was already in the army when he took me to the martial arts section during one of his visits. You're unlikely to become a great athlete, but you'll learn to protect yourself and your girlfriend, he said. That was the last time I ever saw him. 6 months later, he was killed in one of the hot spots. My first irreplaceable loss. Classes in a section taught me self-control. I'm not just talking about the skills I learned. Strangely, I was making progress. I even competed in national competitions, but that wasn't my goal. I went to a technical university and 5 years later became a mechanical engineer. However, I never went into production. I was attracted to Army service. Robbie's stories did their job and changed my life. In my 3rd year at university, I met Emily, an ordinary girl from an ordinary family. A natural blonde with brown eyes, she was friends with my classmate by then and was going to marry him. There was not a spark between us, but lightning. She broke off the engagement with her boyfriend, despite the entreaties of her family and friends. 6 months later, we were married. A year later, twins were born, a boy and a girl, Robbie and Masha. I adapted quickly to the Army. I went to a lot of hotspots, even to Africa. I served as an instructor in an African country, training their soldiers in artillery. That's how I spent 6 months. One day, on my way back from training, I broke the main rule, not to drink water from local springs. As a result, I got hepatitis and was sent back to my home country for treatment. I was hospitalized for about a month. Hepatitis is a sticky thing. My liver was the first thing that got hurt. When I was discharged from the hospital, the doctor said I was lucky, but there could be problems in the future. He didn't specify. A year later, I was wounded rather seriously. Further service was out of the question. I retired from the reserve with the rank of captain and started adapting to civilian life. My wife was always there for me, Except for Africa, of course. She never left me for a single day and didn't go away like some wives to their mothers to take a break from their husbands. I always knew a loving woman was waiting for me at home, ready to watch my back. As a civilian, I looked around for a while and then opened a shop for repairing musical instruments and toys. It might not seem like much, but let me tell you, I had a waiting list. There are always many music lovers who want to fix their favorite instrument. New ones cost a lot of money, and repairs are relatively cheap. After 2 years, the shop turned into a company. In addition to repairs, we began making exclusive guitars and luxury toys. Emily worked as a doctor at the regional diagnostic center and also earned a lot of money. We had a large apartment in the city center inherited from my grandfather, as well as a spacious country house which we built ourselves. The children went to school, and everything was fine. Emily was one of those rare types of women who didn't age. On the contrary, she became even more beautiful by adulthood. Not a single wrinkle on her face, her curly hair, beautiful chest, and finally, legs from the ears. And all this was my wife. On the other hand, I began to have a little problem. My body started to gain fat, a consequence of hepatitis. Gradually, my figure got heavier, and I lost the abs on my belly. That would have been all right, but I noticed that my wife became self-conscious about me. The love was still there, but we were less in public together. We truly loved each other and were always together, both at work and on vacation. Recently, there was a fashion for corporate parties. Only the lazy didn't talk about what was going on there. Sometimes my wife used to go to these events with me alone. I had no reason to forbid her fun, but at some point, I began to notice strange looks from her colleagues. I didn't pay much attention to this, but subconsciously I became tense. Something was going on behind my back, but I couldn't yet understand. Grigor Reef, a well-known businessman in our city, had been visiting my wife's office for some time. In our time, he held a firm position in the construction business, and then he got sick. Emily was a cardiologist and successfully conducted a course of treatment, but the businessman was passionate about his health and daily sought to get to her appointments with bunches of flowers. One day, I decided to meet Emily after work. As I was kissing my wife, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the businessman with flowers. He turned around in time and walked past us, pretending to be going to someone in the center. It didn't escape my notice that Emily blushed deeply and averted her eyes. Do you know how blondes blush? One night at dinner, Emily turned to me. Elton Grigorie, you know him, is throwing a party. He wants to invite you and me. As if incidentally, she said, pouring me a coffee. What does that have to do with us? I snorted and looked at my wife. I knew about her platonic relations with Grigor Reef. I was even going to interfere at some point in their tender friendship. But for the time being, I decided to observe what would happen. I trusted my wife, especially since the businessman wasn't the only man around. Emily was not to be jealous of every man walking around in their pants around her. He wants to thank me for the successful treatment. Lots of famous people will be there with live music. We're invited. The party is this Friday, by the way, Emily said. Emily, I wanted to talk to you about Grigorie. It seems to me that he's trying to glue himself to you. It reminds me of hunting. Even from the outside, you can see he wants to get hold of you. Doesn't it seem like he's playing around? I put on the table a cup with half-finished coffee. Elton, I have nothing with him. Yes, he gives me some attention, but no more than that. Well, maybe you do realize that if something else happens, it would be a disaster for us, Elton. Don't be silly. I just want to go to the party, and I want you to be there too. I'm not going to flirt with anyone. Emily blushed. And somehow I think that Grigor will pursue you in every way. Can you imagine how things will turn out if he does? I watched Emily's reaction carefully. After all, we are adults. We won't be there alone, and there will be security. I can take care of myself. Don't be offended. My wife ran her fingers caressingly over my cheek. In the end, I agreed. Emily talked me into it after all, but I didn't decide to go because I listened to my wife. I wanted to settle the matter with Emily and the businessman once and for all. The party was scheduled to start at 7 o'clock in the evening. Emily was putting on her makeup in front of the mirror. She looked like a model on the runway. Her dark red, almost burgundy dress looked stunning to say the least. It unobtrusively emphasized my wife's almost perfect figure, letting me see the bulges and curves in all the right places. I do not know why it upset me. Some bad feelings did not leave me all these days. I dressed simply, black loose pants, a white shirt, and a velour jacket. I thought for a long time about what to wear on my feet and settled on black leather shoes with pointed toes. Maybe not too fashionable, but functional. Emily hugged me and kissed me on the lips. "Do you think I look good?" I answered glumly. "You look amazing, you know it yourself. I only wondered one thing, for whom are you so dressed up?" "For you, my love, only for you," Emily replied. "Listen, let's not go to hell with this party. We'll have a great time at home." I was grasping at straws to postpone the inevitable disaster. "Honey, we had a deal," Emily pouted. "You look great too, by the way." I looked at my wife and took her in my arms. She took my hands from her shoulders and reproachfully looked at me. "Elton, you'll wrinkle the dress." I realized that in her mind, she had long been at the party. For a moment, I thought I was saying goodbye to my wife. I took her by the arm and walked her to the door. Emily was walking down to the car when, without changing my body position, I flipped the light switch with my left foot right above my head. Emotions vanished into thin air in an instant. I was ready. We arrived almost on time. The gate was open and we drove freely to the parking lot in front of the house. The valet ran up to us, but I didn't trust him with my car. Then he just showed me the empty spaces. I didn't hesitate and took the last one to be able to freely leave the garage if necessary. I did everything automatically. My subconscious mind and my still not quite lost army skills worked for me. I gave the valet money and asked them not to force my car, leaving a free pass. Emily looked at my maneuvers with surprise and concern. "What's all this for? It's like you're getting ready for something bad," she said. "Relax, my love, everything will be fine." But I didn't care what she said. I just shrugged it off. "It's just a little precaution. We'll see how things work out. The most important thing is that this party is not the end of our marriage." The wife sub turned pale. It seemed to me that she knows something ready for something. But what damn? It's getting bad before it starts, but maybe all is not lost yet. We walked to the front door and up the marble steps. Just before the door, Emily turned to me. "Elton, let's have fun today. Neither you nor I want any trouble. Let's relax and enjoy nice company and good music." The door swung open, and the young man asked for our last names. I said our names. He looked at the guest list for a while and then uttered, "Emily Veers and a companion." He looked at me and I saw a sneer in his eyes. "2 people, come on in, gentlemen, have a nice evening." I looked at my wife in surprise. With a companion like a free supplement. Cold rage stirred in my stomach. Emily looked at me strangely and squeezed my palm reassuringly as we passed. I saw, out of the corner of my eye, a contemptuous smirk on the lips of the guard at the entrance to the hall. We were met by Mr. Grigorie himself. Beside him stood a young woman in a very short lettuce dress. Her short cropped black hair beautifully framed her swarthy face. She smelled of expensive perfume. The owner kissed my wife's hand. "You are a miracle worker, I just have no words." Then the businessman turned to me. "You're Elton? I've heard a lot about you. Nice to meet you. For you," he smiled at Emily, "I'm just Boris." He held out his hand for me to shake. I took it. He started to squeeze it. I responded and, kind looking into his eyes, I could see that he was already in pain and was trying his best not to show it. Okay, that was enough for the first time. I unclenched my palm. There was a long pause, then just Boris smiled and said, "Come on in. Friends, make yourselves at home. Meet our other guests." He did not introduce his companion to us. A lot of people had already gathered. A few sportsmen and their wives, a couple of actors from the regional theater, and just a few nice-looking women. There was also someone from the mayor's office. I didn't know the rest, and to be honest, I didn't want to know them. I was worried about something else entirely. Emily kissed me on the cheek and ran to powder her nose. I wandered around trying to stay close to the buffet table. I grabbed a glass of soda and took a slow sip, looking around the room. Drinking this evening wasn't my plan. I saw Emily appear in the hall. Boris just walked up to her and took her by the elbow. Emily turned to him and smiled, then said something to him which made him shake his head uneasily. Grigor looked around, saw his companion, and waved her off. Someone put their hand on my shoulder. I turned around. It was the friend of the owner, with a cute smile looking at me. "My name is Ava. Bring me some champagne," she said. She was a beauty, not as beautiful as Emily, but still. I took a flute from the table and gave it to the girl. "You're amazing." Frankly, I was not up to flirting today, so I just blurted out the first thing that came to mind. It was bad timing when she came up to me. Wait, I remembered Boris waving at her. Okay, I get it. This girl seemed to be reserved for me so that I wouldn't get in the way. That night, we had a little talk with the girl. Nothing about just some nonsense. She was staring at me, keeping her gaze fixed on me, clearly letting me know she was willing to do more than just talk, pure lust. I continued to watch my wife over her shoulder. Emily and the host were dancing 2 quick dances, and then they went to the bar. Another unfamiliar couple approached. Emily was having a good time. She had completely forgotten that she had come here with her husband. "I see you can't take your eyes off your wife," Ava grinned. "Don't worry about her. She has a very busy evening ahead of her, and Boris won't let her get bored. Look at me. I am your consolation prize tonight." I wasn't surprised. I just looked at the woman with a cold, serpentine stare. She even shivered. She didn't seem to care about love. I figured it out, probably not tonight. She stepped away from me quickly and was out of sight. I glanced at Emily again. She was dancing enthusiastically with just Boris, a slow dance. The dance floor was almost empty, with only 2 couples on it. A small bandstand was occupied by musicians. An unfamiliar couple was making out. My wife and the businessman were doing it in a less obvious way. He whispered something in her ear, and she tried to get close to him. It was obvious that Emily was sinking more and more into love nirvana. Finally, she let Boris wrap his arms around her 5th place and pull her close. He kissed her openly without hiding. I could see Emily didn't know what she was doing. I knew it was time to intervene. I went out onto the dance floor. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 intimidating-looking guards move away from the opposite wall. I patted the voluptuary on the shoulder. "A change of suitor," the master answered irritably, not letting my wife out of his embrace. "Piss off, you stooge. Emily is mine today. Uncle, you're not confused. She's my wife, so you get lost." Boris, holding Emily's hand, waved to his bulls. They slowly approached. "You set me up. We're going to leave now. If you stay here, there's no going back." Suddenly, it was easy for me. I no longer had any doubts about what would happen next. My rage had to be unleashed on someone. "Elton, my love, it's only one night after all. You wouldn't leave me because of one night?" Emily was almost crying. "You want to sleep with that man so badly that you're willing to give a damn about me?" I almost screamed. The music stopped, and my words rang out across the room. The owner could see I was furious. He realized it was time to quiet the stubborn stooge who didn't want to give up his wife to be slaughtered by the alpha male. He waved his hand carelessly in the direction of the bodyguards. "Elton, you could have had a great time with Ava, and so could I. I do not understand why you did not agree. You liked her, didn't you?" Emily almost cried. "Of course she did. The jealous husband ruined the whole evening. Get that cuckold out of here now." Grigor was no longer hiding his rage. They came at me, coming in from 2 sides. I waited, keeping my eyes on my wife. The bodyguards grabbed me, trying to wring my hands. Emily covered her mouth with her palm and just stared without moving. Then she hid behind Grigor's back. It seems that she no longer considered me her husband. "I'm leaving. Are you with me?" I spoke slowly. "Get out, you disgust me." That's what I had to prove. I looked once more at the battlefield, and without looking at my wife, I left the house at a brisk pace. No one held me back. I went out to the parking lot. It was already dark. I leaned tiredly into the driver's seat and turned the ignition key. The engine started instantly, rumbling like a big, well-fed cat. I carefully drove out of the parking lot, slowing down for a moment as if I expected to see a repentant Emily in the rearview mirror. Then I gently pressed the gas and slowly rolled out of the open gate. One thing I was sure of after I kicked him in the balls: the idiot was unlikely to have anything with my wife. Before I pulled over to the highway, I pulled out my cell phone and dialed a familiar number. They picked up the phone almost immediately, as if they were waiting impatiently for my call. "How did it go?" CLE asked, my companion. "A little worse than I thought it would be." I opened the glove compartment and took out a full pack of cigarettes. "I hope you did not go too far," I heard a chuckle on the phone. "No, it's cool," I flicked my lighter. "Need any help?" "I don't know yet. Keep in touch." I hung up. In a minute, my car was racing toward town. I decided to spend a night in the city apartment. It pained me to go back to the place where it all began. There were paintings on all the walls, even in the kitchen. Landscapes, portraits, still lives, and genre scenes. I didn't know the names of the artists. My grandfather was fond of painting, and only he knew which artists had left their mark on his apartment. This apartment smelled like my childhood. I often visited my grandfather and stayed with him overnight. It smelled like cigars and the smoke from a lit fireplace. Here in the old house, I wanted to wait out some time and reflect on what had happened. I lit the fireplace, even though it was early autumn and warm enough, but I wanted at least for a minute to bring back my childhood, to touch the time that had passed, to turn back the withered leaves. I poured myself half a glass of Irish whiskey and sat down in my grandfather's chair, stretching my legs toward the fire. I didn't notice how I dozed off. The doorbell woke me up. It's 3 a.m. Without throwing off the plaid from my shoulders and losing my slippers on the way, I went to the door. I opened it and saw Emily. I looked at her. She was staring at me, tears rolling from her inflamed eyes. She looked awful, no better than I did. "Elton, I knew you were here. In all my life, I had never screwed up so badly. I'm sorry. It won't happen again, never again. I don't want to lose you," she sobbed and put her head down. "We had nothing. I left after Grigor was taken away by ambulance." I shrugged my shoulders. "Well, at least one good news. So, Emily, what did you think would happen when you decided to let that idiot have a night with you? Did you think I wouldn't see it coming? Because of Ava? I was an idiot, a narcissistic fool. Tell me, did you and Grigor Reef set this whole thing up? Did you know beforehand what was going to happen at the party?" She looked down. "Not everything, only in general terms. He suggested that when we got there we might switch, but I thought I would say no and that would be the end of it," she said. "But you didn't say no, you said yes. I thought you were going to stay with Ava. I saw the way she looked at you. It was one night. What about after that? Did you think we would have gone on as before when I would have known that you were messing around with another man, when we both would have known about it? How could I trust you now?" We continued to stand in the entryway. I didn't invite her into the apartment. "I can understand why you thought Ava would come for me that night, but why did you think this creep would be better than me?" She was silent. She had no answers to my questions. "Emily, go away. Just go away. I don't have a wife anymore. You cynically betrayed me. There with your lover. He is not my lover. He is—" I did not let her finish. Closing the door silently, she stood on the landing for a while, and then I heard the clatter of her heels. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of a car pulling away. On Tuesday, an older, imposing man walked into my office. "Mr. Elton Vickers." He waggled his chin imposingly, scrutinizing me through his tinted glasses. "Yes, to whom do I have the honor?" I asked. "D. Brosy Aristar, Mr. Gore's lawyer." The man tilted his head. "Shall I sit down? To what do I owe the honor?" I took out a cigar and defiantly began to cut the tip. "Mr. Grigorie intends to sue you for financial compensation for the injuries you inflicted last Friday evening," he said. I wonder where Grigor found that creep. He should be a doorman in a brothel, not a lawyer. And what's stopping Mr. Grigorie from doing that? I lit a long match and began to smoke my cigar. "Before he puts you behind bars and destroys your business, Mr. Grigorie wants to make you an offer," he said. I was silent, concentrating, blowing rings of smoke. "Mr. Grigorie agrees to forget about the conflict if your wife spends this weekend with him at his estate." The lawyer blushed at such an offer. Even that jerk in a blue suit knew that no normal man would ever go for that. "And why did you come to me? Go to my ex-wife and make arrangements with her. After all, after the last party, it's her problem. It's not like your boss is asking me to spend the night with him." I clamped my cigar in my teeth and stood up, showing that we had nothing more to talk about. The lawyer silently left my office. I looked at myself in the mirror with a cigar in my teeth. Well, just like Schwarzenegger, only a little fat. I sat in silence for a while, then took out my cell phone. One day later, an old car stopped in front of Grigorie's businessman's mansion. 2 guys in orange uniforms walked to the gate. "Gas emergency. There's a big leak in your village. We're checking all the houses," said the guard to the taller one. The guard spoke on the phone for a while, then said, "Go ahead and open the gate." Accompanied by 2 muscle loaders, the gasmen went down to the basement of the gas boiler. One of the repairmen stuck his hand in his pocket and opened a small can. There was a noticeable odor of gas. "There seems to be a leak down here somewhere," said the tall man, setting his case on the floor. "You smell gas?" The gasman started looking at the meter. "And when did you change the pipes?" asked the small one. The guard shrugged his shoulders. "Okay, now we will close the valve and fix the leak. But we still need to change the communications. Tell the landlord it has to be done as quickly as possible." The little one started taking out his tools from his suitcase. The tall one, covering the pipe with his back, wrapped a small amount of special ignition cord around it and put a 3-hour pencil cap in it. Then he conscientiously wrapped the whole thing with tar tape. The little one rummaged around underneath, stealthily opening the valve. "Well, that's it. If anything, he didn't specify what. Call the alarm. The guys picked up the tool and briskly went to the exit. The guard closed the doors to the basement tightly. 3 hours later, there was an explosion from a gas leak in the basement that caused a fire. By the time rescuers arrived, the house had almost completely burned down. Fortunately, no one was killed. Several guards and the cook received minor burns. Mr. Grigorie had no time for erotic pleasures then. His warehouse of finished products caught fire. In addition to construction, Mr. Grigorie was also engaged in the manufacture of exclusive furniture by special order. Everything burnt, which was prepared for shipment to customers. The investigation concluded that the old wiring shorted out. To improve his nerves, businessman Grigorie urgently went abroad to Thailand for an erotic massage. But at the Bangkok airport, pills were found in his luggage. He was immediately taken to the detention center. He is now awaiting trial. How this will turn out for him remains to be seen. I live alone in my apartment. Emily won't give up trying to make peace with me, but I can't forgive her. I still have her words in my ears. Get out! You disgust me. Oh, and one more thing. I transferred some money to the account of the Wild Geese Special Forces Veterans Club, of which I have been a regular member for almost 10 years. But nobody knows about it. And you don't tell anyone. What do you think of our story today? I thought it was quite exciting. I like the interesting plot twists in the story. What's your opinion? Write in the comments. See you in the next videos. Thanks for watching. How did you find the story? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more awesome stories like this. Your feedback and support mean a lot.